I'm gonna spend 1.5 hours here because I have some stuff to do today. So I'm gonna continue to do the build space thing, nights and weekends. I watched a bunch of videos yesterday, and I think this video here is really good. I'm gonna watch them again to understand more. And now what I'm gonna do is just study the libraries, because I think the problem there is a problem with the life cycle. Also, the thing that I've seen from the videos yesterday that I realized is that, and I knew, like, intuitively I felt like there's something wrong with this, which is, but then on the video that he talked about it, the problem with this, with putting this as a global variable here, is that every time that you use this on other components, it's just gonna have the same value for this one. So if you're not using the state, it's just gonna stay in memory, the value, as a global variable. So like this essentially makes it so that I can't use this component on other parts of the site, which is bad. Like maybe I can get away, like if this is the less, like if nothing else works, then I think as a last alternative this might be the way to do it, but it's definitely not the best because you can't reuse the components. So like what I could do is just create a bunch of different other components and then just use the component once. But I think that this doesn't have, is not related to the nodes not cleaning up on the functions. I think that might be something else, but it could be possible that is a global variable that is doing that as well. I don't remember if I used that on the fiber one or not. So what I'm probably gonna have to try to do now is to try to use the context bridge there, because the reason why I did this in this way is because the context is not working when I put the use graph there, the graph context. Inside of the shape or the particle thing, so I can update the values. What? Oh, it's because I have this thing. Had caps lock on. Okay, reconnect. So I'm not sure if how should I do it here. Don't remember really well. I think the idea should be the array. So maybe just make it equal to this. I think this is gonna fail because of the context. Or maybe not. I don't have the... If it works like this, then great. Yeah, but yeah. So that's the error I was getting before as well. But it works like this on the other files, so I remember that I couldn't figure out why it was giving me this error now. And I tried the different ways of importing. Because it works on the other files, so I assume it has something to do with the context from React Pixi. Yeah, so this is the thing as well that I realized yesterday when I was watching the videos. What they're doing on the file is implementing a custom renderer. That's what they are doing. And I assume that it's probably to optimize for the canvas rendering. I still don't understand really well how it works, but I think like now it's more clear in my mind than it was yesterday. That the rendering is responsible for the reconciliation, and the reconciliation is just the update of the state of the application. You have the virtual DOM, the real DOM. The reconciliation is the diffing algorithm, which is the process of figuring out which components were changed and which ones have to be updated. And then you have the React Fiber, which is the thing that manages the update of the components, because this happens asynchronously. And the checking phase for which thing is going to be updated can be stopped, but the commit phase, which is the phase that actually implements the changes, can't be stopped. So it happens on these two changes, and then during this part is the process of the double buffering thing. So pretty much like React doesn't say anything about the rendering thing. It's just the structure for creating the JSX syntax and setting up the components. And then you can build your own custom renderer if you use this reconciler thing from React. So here I think what they are doing is implementing their own rendering. So whenever the application, but this is the stuff that I'm not 100% sure, but I think that the way that it works is on the other parts of the application, when I'm not using this library, the normal rendering from React is used. But whenever I'm gonna use this library, that the components from this library, then I'm using this custom renderer, and then because of that, the context works in a different way. And I think that's the reason why I'm getting the error there. Because I'm trying to access the context from the stage, from the child of the stage. So I think I'm gonna have to implement this solution here, but that's another problem. I think I'm gonna try to solve the other one first, because it's more like not only more important, I think, but more interesting to me, because I can coast with this shitty solution for now, which just using the global variables. So I think it's better to try to optimize the other stuff first, because it's gonna make the thing a lot better. And also, I understood the use callback hook as well, that there's a video, maybe I'll show here. The thing is, I don't remember React. Well, I wrote down everything on the file, so I can search for this stuff on this file here. I'll watch a shit ton of videos. I think I'm gonna watch this playlist again today. I just wanna get down, really like understand intuitively. There's also this other video that I'm gonna rewatch from this guy here, which is, he explains why, like, they made some changes on React, and that's the reason why it renders twice on use effect. And it seems like they're trying to move people away from making API requests inside of the use effect. And then it's better to use another pattern there. And I think I might try to, like, there's another hook called use SWR, I think. And there's also use query or React query or something like that. It seems like it is more recommended to make make API calls. But I think that this is just a small thing, so I can like look at that later. But pretty much the reason why you want to use callback is because every rendering you're creating a new function. So is the whole thing about the references to objects in the way that it works in programming. Like there's something called the shallow copy, which just copies the reference to the object, but it doesn't copy everything that exists inside of the object. And then the deep copy copies everything from the object. So like the way that React works is that every renderer is creating a new function. Like even though the function is the same, when you look at it, it's like a different function in memory. So if you don't want that to happen, you want access to the original function, then you have to use the use callback. And then it is recommended to do that when you're passing, I think, a function as a props to a child component, and then that child is gonna call the function, because then like the way that it's gonna trigger the re-renders makes it so that it breaks the thing if you're not using use callback. And then use memo is just to memoize the execution of the whatever you put inside, because every time you render, it's gonna execute whatever it renders. A lot of this stuff I have watched videos before, and this is the video that I'm gonna watch, I think, later. But just because like before, I think I was studying so many different things at the same time, so I kind of like, it's hard to really remember everything. So even though I watched a bunch of these videos and I knew like how it worked, like it's still not very clear. It's not a very intuitive understanding of how things work. So, but I think after watching these videos over and over again, it's becoming more and more like intuitive to me to understand like how everything is working, how everything is rendering. It gets complicated when you have a bunch of different components interacting with each other, because that's when the confusion is of the hierarchy of which components are going to be updated first, and then there's some stuff that's why I think this video is really good, because she talks about some details of the way that it works on the React fiber and the process of reconciliation. Where's the video from that guy? I think it's something with webs something. Oh, maybe I think I saved on the watch later thing. No, it's not here. Yeah, this is the video that he talks about. He just call back and explains. Maybe I'll watch this again as well. Or maybe it's this one. Like, but both of those videos are really very good. So here the problem is this thing here, so I have to understand, to solve this I have to understand how it's gonna be rendered. I think I need to understand more how the custom components work from this. But that's the thing, in order to understand these custom components I have to understand like how the implementation of the renderer that they did works, and how that is different from the normal implementation. I think once I understand that, then it's gonna become more clear on what is going on here. Because obviously it works when I render, so like I am passing this stuff there, and then it breaks when it changes. So it's breaking on the update of the components. So this is the biggest challenge, let's say, because it's very hard to find videos about this. And the main point of confusion I think I had since the beginning, which is how are the canvas state related to the React state. I think that's the biggest challenge to understand, because obviously if you change the canvas it should change, not obviously, maybe it's not that how it works. Like what happens when you change an element in the canvas? Are you changing the state of the component? Like probably you are, and then if you're changing the state of the component, it should trigger re-renders in the React. But then how does that work? Like if you're changing just the visualization and you're not triggering any use state or use effect, then it shouldn't have any effect on the re-rendering, I think. But then how does the React view that update in states? It's not very clear. Like if React is not re-rendering, then what is the thing that is doing the update of the state for the canvas? But here I think that it is triggering re-renders when it draws, because it's using use state. Oh, the other thing that I couldn't find videos, I think, is the primitive thing. Yeah, maybe this video is good. Yeah, so that's the thing. I have to understand how the cycle there. So I think first I need to understand like the flow of execution inside of the viewport, pixi-viewport. Then I have to understand how the component, custom component works. Like when it's creating here. I think this is on like before the maybe like this is on the on mount parts of the cycle. That's this works. So when it's mounting the component, it creates this stuff, this class. And then I need to understand how the zoom, the wheel event triggers rendering. So maybe that's a good question to ask. But it should be kind of hard to find, I think. A reconciler primitive. So the difference, the reason why it's different, I think, on the stage and this part, the life cycles, like I was saying before, on yesterday, I think, is that these life cycles are related to the reconciler part, which is the part that is updating the virtual DOM into the real DOM. And the other life cycles are related to the way that React does it for the cycles. So I think this is the difference. These are the custom ones, and then the other ones is if you wanna create the components on the way that React does it, but I don't really understand very well why though, because like, why not make it so that the other stage component also uses the custom lifecycle keys there or methods? Like, why does he use these ones instead of using the other ones? So I need to study more, like figure out, and probably off stream, probably today and tomorrow, I'm gonna watch a bunch of videos and maybe use ChatGPT as well to see, like, to understand the process of creating our own custom rendering, and then study this file here as well to understand how they implemented the renderer that they are using here. And I think that's gonna help me understand how the custom component works, and then after I understand how the custom component works, I also have to study the viewports to understand how they are related, how the events of the wheel are related to the... So I think the wheel is pretty simple. It's going to trigger this function at some point, because that's the callback that is called when the event is triggered there on the class, so it calls this function. But then the question is why, when it calls this, it doesn't have the thing. I think maybe it's because the component unmounted. It has to be because the component unmounted. So like when it mounts everything, it creates the class, and then but then by the time it it updates, like by the time it's supposed to update, the component hasn't mounted already. So I think it has to do with, yeah, but the thing is, it should, like after it creates the component, it should stay there on the virtual DOM, I think. So let me see. This one returns the viewport, which is this. So it instantiates and returns. Maybe I'm implementing the wrong level. That could be the thing. But I think I tried to do the other way around and it doesn't work. Where I just pass this outside. I think it's not gonna work. I definitely think that the problem is that is unmounting before. Like it mounts and then when I do the zoom, the component doesn't exist anymore on the React thing. Maybe I should search for what this function is supposed to should do and how it's supposed to. It does have the events here. So like it has something to do probably with the reconciler, because I'm using the custom component to render this. So it's something related to this function. The thing is, like, it's calling the same parent element. I cannot read properties, I'm not reading parent elements. So it makes me think that it's something related to the way that React, because they built React pixi-viewport to work on React, and then when you do your custom renderer, you're using, like, because you're using a different reconciler, it's gonna have different properties, the elements. So in the way that it's gonna update and trigger functions inside of components, the way that React is gonna do that, there is a mismatch because I'm using a custom renderer that has a different reconciler, and this assumes the standard one that has this attribute. But I'm not really sure, because here Okay, seems that this exists there. On the console log here. Yes, event system, so. Another approach that I can take to solve this, but this seems very, like, too much work, would be to just create another React. Maybe it's not too much work, because I can just use the command and then it's gonna set up everything. And then I copy the code, and then I try to use this on a normal component. And then I console log on the normal one. The other thing that I was thinking about is I'm not sure if it was a mistake to use Next.js for this. I think like maybe this already exists, but there should be a way to disable server-side rendering for certain pages. I think this might exist. It might be an option on the compiler that you put on the Next.js config thing. So I might do that, because it might make it a lot easier as well to work with everything. But then I watched the Theo's video again, and I think that it is better to use choose server-side rendering because for the other pages, because it's better for SEO. And there are other benefits as well that he explains, but I don't remember really well because it's kind of complicated. Because everything goes back and forth between servers and clients until, like, the first stage it loads the HTML, then it hydrates, and the process of hydrating is just making the JavaScript work. So it loads the HTML, then makes the JavaScript work, and then there could be other requests to APIs to get the data, and the server side makes it faster, I think, in the beginning stages before it hydrates. And also there's other stuff that I don't remember. Maybe it's because they just changed the... The weird thing is this error here, parent element. It looks like the function doesn't exist here. So maybe it's looking for this function on the class. Hey Denzel, what's up? Oh, this is why, I think. So maybe it's not on the thing. It's because it's saying that this DOM element doesn't exist. Reading parent elements. So it must be on this, but it's weird that it's giving the error. It's like pointing to these parts. So maybe it hasn't anything to do with React reconciler thing, but it might be because of the React reconciler. It's because of DOM element. So DOM elements probably do that. Let's see. It's probably the current element, which is the canvas. Oh, maybe it's because I'm using Graph. I've been good, man. And you? So why is it saying that it's undefined? Let's see. It must be because of the cycle, I think. So is that... I think it has to do with the reconciler. It must be because like this is created through the custom component, which is using the React reconciler from the custom renderer, and then it creates the DOM element at that point, I think. But maybe not, because yeah, this is actually being created through the app, I think, on the stage component. So once the stage component is created, it creates this event system here, because the event is just part of the that class. So it's part of the apps and the renderer from the apps. So the this on the event should be, the DOM element should be created by the time that it creates the app. So it is working up until this point, but then when it calls the function, it doesn't work because it is undefined. So it means that this instance doesn't exist, I think, of the app when the event gets triggered. But like, why would that be the case? That's the thing. Because it has to exist because the canvas is there. That's what, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I think I'm gonna try to console log here, see if it's showing anything. But then definitely what I'm gonna do is just study a lot more. I wanna really understand how the custom renderer that they did there, like I have to understand how they did it and how is the standard way to do it, and then think about the differences to see how that's gonna impact the rendering cycle of the thing. Also have something like my vision now. It's really weird. I think I had this in the past. Like I see some like shapes. It doesn't show anything. Like the thing that doesn't make sense is if it was the rendering thing, then like it should be undefined when it calls this function. Maybe it's because of the way that events are set up. I'm trying to think about different ways that I can ask the question. I think the main thing here is understanding how event listeners are related to the life cycle of the components. It's really annoying. This thing is only on this eye. I think it's probably coffee that does that. Even though I didn't drink today. When I've been drinking too much coffee, I think it happens because of the hormones. Might be like imbalance on the dopamine in the brain. So I'm gonna slow down the coffee. Usually I try to avoid drinking coffee, but for the nights and weekends I decided to just do it so I can push myself more to do more on the 6 weeks. Maybe not the best idea. So I think I'm gonna ask this to ChatGPT. If I can find the tab. How do I keep myself? I'm not that disciplined, I think. Okay, definitely there's a lot of room for growth when it comes to discipline, but like, let me think. Like the way that your identity works, like you are synchronized with space-time, which is your environment. So like everything that you do gets gravitational force over time, because your whole system is designed to go to the path of least resistance to avoid risk and minimize energy. So everything that you do becomes more likely that you will do in the future, and that's why habits are formed. So you're constantly trying to rationalize why you should do the thing that takes less effort, and that's why it's so difficult to think critically and reflect, because that forces you out of your comfort zone. And everyone is always trying to maximize, like to keep on the same track they have been. So this is the reason why older people are harder to change, because the more time you've been alive, the more gravitational force the habits you have pick up, and the more gravitational force your belief systems pick up. So it's like a funnel over time, the way you have to imagine. So at first you have thoughts and ideas, and then those thoughts and ideas manifest themselves into actions. And then those actions, if they are repeated for a very large amount of time, they become part of your personality. And then from your personality it becomes your identity. So it's like a funnel. So the way that you become disciplined, I think, is just having awareness over the funnel of information you're creating. Because the way that you are related to space-time is going to determine the identity that you create. And once you transform an identity, once you construct an identity, it becomes really hard for you to change, because it's like you're building a giant skyscraper. So the foundation of the skyscraper is your identity. So like the best way to be disciplined is just to have awareness over the funnel of information that's making up your identity, because once it construct identity, it's going to be very difficult for you to change the way that you behave. Because for you to change your identity, you have to change all the other patterns that are connected with that identity, which are all the thoughts and belief systems you have, and all the patterns of actions you have that are integrated with space-time to change yourself. So like you can think about it like this, like if you're someone that is fat, let's say, every time you interact with someone, there's a routine that gets triggered, and the routine is the communication you have with other people, and the way that they perceive you, the way that you perceive yourself, and all of the things that happen, and all of the stuff gets cached, let's say, in your subconscious mind. So because you're always trying to minimize energy, you're always trying to rationalize to keep that patterns of behaviors because they kept you alive so far, even if there's not optimal. So because you communicate with a bunch of different people and you go to a bunch of different environments, you already have all these programs set up in your brain of the way you should interact with other people, and they're all centered in you being fat, like, because that's one part of the stuff that makes up everything, the way that you relate with the universe. So if you want to become fit, then it's going to be very challenging because you're going to have to rethink everything that you do with other people and the way that they perceive you, the way that you perceive yourself, the amount of risk you're going to get. So a lot of the reason, like a big reason of why people, and this is the problem with people just saying to other people like, you should just eat healthy and exercise, because it's not that simple. It's just like extremely complex hierarchy of abstractions that make up the identity of people. And the reason why they are not healthy and they're not fat is because of much deeper underlying problems with the way that the societies are structured and all the like economic relationships and political relationships between countries, cultures, the way that everything evolved is. So it's much deeper because it's psychological, and the biggest challenge is having the self-awareness to understand how you should align yourself with the hierarchy of values that is most important to you at any given moment in time, because there isn't any right or wrong answer. So like the right answer is not to be fit, the right answer is not to be fat. It's just about you having the self-awareness and the clarity of the cause and effect relationships of the patterns of behavior you have and the environment they're most likely to produce. So if you're fat, you're most likely to produce a future where you're going to have more disease, and it's going to become more difficult for you to do things like that you enjoy. But that's not a bad or good thing. It's just a cause and effect relationship. So that's the reason why it's so hard. So I think it's not about discipline, it's about awareness. So like understanding how to align yourself with the stuff that you want. And the reason why a lot of people struggle is not because they're not disciplined, it's because they lack the awareness to understand the cause and effect relationship between their actions and the environment that is going to produce, and because their subconscious mind is always trying to make them rationalize, so become the victim mindset. You create stories for yourself because that way you don't have to get out of your comfort zone and do things that might be more risky to you. So that's the reason why a lot of people are just like creating excuses and not, because you don't want to face the truth, because if you face the truth, then you have to reflect on your whole identity, and you don't want to do that because it takes energy. No worries. But obviously this is just a perspective as well. Like you should always reflect on yourself and think for yourself, I think, because it's just obviously I have a lot of flaws as well, so there are obviously a lot of stuff that I don't know, like, because I lack the awareness to know, so I'm not in full alignment, I think, because it's very hard to do. And this is why it's so difficult, because your body has all the systems that are competing with each other in order to determine what you should do. And at the ultimate level, it's just about surviving and reproducing. So like there's all these different parts of yourself trying to hijack your conscious mind to do whatever they want. And they're not always in alignment with what would be like the most like harmonic place for you to exist in the longest period of time. And that's why it's so difficult. Yeah, nice. That's why also like whenever you're judging people, like be very careful, because judgment is the way that your brain uses to minimize energy. So usually people that are dumber are gonna judge more other people, because that's the way they have to cope with the complexity. So like the more you judge people, the more you're creating a prison for yourself, because it allows you to save energy on having to think about the universe. So regardless of what your political view, left or right or whatever, whenever you're making the judgment against someone, or like on the other side, it's just your body trying to make you minimize the amount of energy you spend. Because then, like, if you don't, you have to reflect on your whole life and your whole identity, and it becomes extremely difficult. And like obviously, like you can't blame people for judging other people, because it's just a natural way that we have to exist, because it is extremely difficult to be like live fully conscious of everything and try to be in alignment, like, because it's the universe is like obviously very complex. So it's crazy like how the brain took those little things and reflect on yourself so badly. Yeah. I think I have to, and obviously this doesn't answer the question that I have. And what I want to understand is, after it creates the event listeners, how does that change the... Oh, no worries. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the support. Maybe it's because it's accessing the canvas. So the canvas is created on when you create the stage, and the parent element would be the div that is outside of the canvas. It makes sense because of the way that, like, the name of the function as well. So map position to points. I think that's what's going on here. So, like, because of this disconnection, like, because the div outside of the stage is being rendered through the normal React cycle, but then the stage component is inside of the custom renderer of the reconciler. So when it tries to get the DOM, the parent element of the DOM element, it doesn't exist. But the reason, like, maybe this is not the case because it's not console logging these there. It should be console logging something here if it was calling the function. That's the thing. But I don't understand why you would say reading parent element if it is not calling the function. Or did I close the thing accidentally? Oh. Yeah, it does show canvas, so let me see. Yeah, it does show the div, so maybe it's not that. Maybe it's something else. Oh, actually no. Now it's saying the same thing. Yeah, so that's the problem, I think. Because here is showing the parent element. But it's because of the rendering cycle. Because this is being done inside of the custom renderer. So maybe there's a mismatch between the... But how would that happen? That's the question. Because they both need to have the same version of the virtual DOM. It's gonna be... Yeah, I need to understand more. I need to study more the renderers. So I think I'm gonna stop here. I'm gonna watch these videos here. So yeah, if I had more time in the afternoon, then I probably would do all of this stuff on stream as well. Then I think I'm probably gonna do some, because I don't know how long it's gonna take me to fully understand how it works. But I think the main thing that I have to focus on now is understanding how the custom renderer works and what is the difference between that and the way that React uses the renderer. So the problem, I think, is on the bridge between the two, because the pixi-viewport is trying to access the element that is outside of the one that is being rendered through the custom renderer from React Pixi, and I think that's why I get the error there, because it is showing up inside of the console log here, so it is getting the element, but then for some reason it says that it is null here. Cannot read properties of null, even though it's console logging here. So it's very weird. So I think the only explanation is the renderer, the mismatch between the renderers. But then I obviously don't understand yet how does that work. How is it possible that it's console logging here, but then it says there is null here? It doesn't make any sense. I think that the only explanation that would make sense is that, like, the view of the application is inside of the scope of the custom renderer, so the view of the function. But then why would console log here? That's what doesn't make any sense. But maybe this is being console logged before it calls the function. But that wouldn't make sense either, I think. Yeah, because it's clearly not here, so. Or maybe it's because when you trigger the events, like it triggers multiple renderers. So the first time it works, yeah, I think that's the case. Like the first time it works, and it shows there, and then it breaks because you can see that it does some zoom here. So that's the thing. So it is working, but then it breaks. I think that's what's going on. So at some point, doing the updates of the renderers, it fucks up the relationship between the parents and the. And it's probably because they're being rendered in different ways. I think that's the only explanation. So there's a mismatch in the way that the normal React updates the state of all the components and the way that the custom render updates. And then it breaks the connection between the child div and the child canvas and the parent div. So this stops existing. So I have to know how to. But this might be a massive problem because I think like I can think a bunch of different solutions now. Not a bunch, but mainly two that jump to my mind. One is to just declare the pixie on a different place. I can declare and then use context and then use the context bridge to put the pixie viewports so that in that way it would use the render outside and then implement that inside. But that wouldn't work because I need to bind the events with the application. So I can try maybe removing from the custom components also can make an effect, or like moving outside of the custom thing that I'm using there. I think that's the page that I closed accidentally, yeah. So trying to implement this outside of the custom component here. But I think that would probably fall into the same thing. But maybe not, because this is using... Yeah, this is using the custom thing. Maybe... So I think the first thing that I'm going to try is to just move this outside of this component here, I think. And then later, I can try other stuff. Because obviously I can't change the... I think maybe like as a last resort, I try to download the library locally, the Pixie React, and just have all the files locally, so I can change the source code to make it work. But obviously not ideal. So if I can change the source code, then I would have to change the source code of the pixi-viewport. But I think I need to study a lot more to understand how, like, the differences and similarities between the two. Like, probably next time that I stream, I'm gonna study the source code as well. But now I'm obviously gonna watch a bunch of videos and clarify more and more how the custom render works. And I'm also gonna study the file. Maybe I'll come back today, later on, to just study this file on stream. But if I don't, then I'm probably gonna come back 2 days from now, or tomorrow in the afternoon. So, yeah.